Can I say good morning, everybody?
Good morning, everybody.
Isn't it beautiful?
Welcome out to West Valley Center and online. I'd like to say a quick shout out to our friends Robert and Adrian who couldn't make it today. Hopefully you guys will be feeling better real soon. So, Reverend Karen, Reverend Clyde, they've got a wonderful message going today. So we're going to get it started with a song that's every Sunday. This is the day, and if you'd like to get up and join us, feel the Spirit, and
let me hear you guys.
Yeah, let's join in. Ready?
Yep. This is the day that the Lord has made. I will rejoice and be glad in it. Sing that with me. This is the day that the Lord has made. I will rejoice and be glad in it. This is the day, a day to be seized in. A day I can feel my spirit set free. Yes, this is the day. It's time to fly higher and higher up in the sky. This is the day that the Lord has made. I will rejoice and be glad in it. This is the day that the Lord has made. I will rejoice and be glad in it. This is the day all my dreams come true. Feel the Spirit working its way through. Yes, this is the day. It's time to fly higher and higher up in the sky. This is the day that the Lord has made. I will rejoice and be glad in it. This is the day that the Lord has made. I will rejoice and be glad in it.
Good morning. Welcome to West Valley Center for Spiritual Living. My name is Reverend Clyde Goins. I'm the assistant minister, and I want to welcome you here on this beautiful Sunday morning and also remind you that we have Dining with the Dudes today. So we have good food for you after service. So please join us for food and fellowship and a lot of fun. All right, so and then I just have one real quick announcement, and it's a reminder that on December the 2nd, we're going to be decorating the center here and transforming it into a Christmas theme. So if you're available on Saturday morning, just have to show up. I think it's around 9 or 10 o'clock. The information is in the bulletin. But anyway, so just show up and it's going to help us decorate the center for the holidays. All right. I'm sorry? And then the Bowls of Thanksgiving is next weekend. So we want you to bring your favorite soup, your favorite stew, whatever that might be, to share a bowl or a pot of soup with the community. And that's going to be our fellowship for Bowls of Thanksgiving is what it's called. So that's next weekend. So we have a lot of fun stuff happening. So speaking of fun stuff, so we are in our pledge program right now for the month of November. We do our yearly pledge program, and our theme this year for seeding the future pledge program is to be the change. And so we are creating a toolbox to help you be the change in our life, in our spiritual home, and in the world. So what you do not only impacts our life, but our actions and our consciousness ripple out into the world. So your yearly financial pledge is seeding our future for our spiritual home, and we ask that for your continued support by completing a pledge card. So our goal is to collect 40 pledge cards, and the pledge amount is $40,000 or $80,000 or more. So we've been giving a gift out every week, or we're giving a gift out every week. And so this week, we're going to be giving out a gift of a sand dollar. And so can you show that picture real quick? So we actually went to Morro Bay. Mark and I went to Morro Bay last over the summertime, and when we were on the beach, there was all of these sand dollars all over the beach, and I got this idea. I'm like, oh my God, we can use this for the pledge program. So we were going around picking up the sand dollars, and I told Mark, I said, no, I don't want you to pick them up. I want to pick them up for my community. So I said, you play with the dog, I'll pick up the sand dollars. So that's what he did. So we actually have sand dollars that we're going to be giving out. So Mark, if you can start handing those out, that'd be great. Also want to remind you that if you did not get a business card last week, he also has extra cards. And the business card on one side has a prayer that we're asking for everybody to say our abundance prayer with us. And then on the other side, there's a mantra, and we'll be talking about that mantra next week. All right, so he's going to be handing out the sand dollars, and so the sand dollar represents transformation, rebirth, prosperity, spiritual growth, and awakening. The sand dollars are marine animals related to sea cucumbers and sea urchins. They are flat, burrowing invertebrates that live in shifting sand and on the shallow coast waters. As a filter feeder, sand dollars extract nutrients from the water. So today, what we're talking about, the spiritual practice that we're talking about today is tithing. And so I thought that the sand dollar was the appropriate gift to give you from nature. So there's two aspects of tithing that I want to discuss with you. First is the business aspect of church. So all churches are a business. And we need your financial support to be the spiritual lighthouse on the West Valley. So we are good stewards with all of your contributions. Our average monthly expense for our spiritual home is about $10,000 a month. And your contributions go towards our general operating fund, which includes staff salaries, maintenance, and utilities. So we don't have a mortgage because our building has been paid for. So previous community members paid off our mortgage to ensure that we had a spiritual home. Your financial support through tithing is our main source of our income. We also had fundraiser events. We rent out space. We provide classes and workshops. And even the thrift store is a source of income. So all of you shoppers, please keep shopping. So the other aspect of tithing that I want to talk about is the spiritual practice that builds our faith in the law of circulation. The original practice was to give 10% of your earnings to the church. It was intended to test your faith. So 10% of your income is a lot of money. It's a lot of money for anybody. So what I'm asking today is I'm asking you to commit to a spiritual practice and tithe what you feel comfortable giving. Okay? I'm asking you to complete a pledge card, and by completing this pledge card, it's a big step. But you will start to see a shift in your consciousness and trust that you are supported. The law of circulation is always working, and we give, what we give, we will receive. This spiritual practice will unlock some the spiritual practice will unlock some resistance that you may have. This spiritual practice will help you stay in the flow of life. And if you've been tithing, so we're going to ask that maybe you think about stretching yourself a little bit and tithe a little bit more, right? But that decision is up to you about how much you want to step into your faith. So when we look at tithing as a spiritual practice, we give it lovingly. We add our loving energy to the flow of life. So if you have any questions or if you want to talk about tithing, I'd be happy to meet with you and discuss tithing together. So please keep the sand dollar close to you. Whenever you can see it, it reminds you of our spiritual transformation, holding our prosperity consciousness, and trusting that we are in the law of circulation. We ask for your pledge amount once a year to help us plan for the budget for 2024. We have extra pledge cards here if you forget to bring your card in. So you can bring your card in and you can drop it off in the gold box in Homes Base in the bookstore. You can give it to me or Reverend Karen, or you can even mail it in. On the pledge card, there you can also check a box that says auto tithe if you're interested in doing a direct draft, and I can help you get that set up. I also want to let you know that you can always change your pledge amount anytime, up or down, anytime throughout the year. You just need to let me know. So our goal is to collect 40 pledge cards with the pledge amount of $80,000 or more. I continue to pray. I ask you to continue to pray with us for the abundance of our spiritual home. So I want to close with a quote from Lao Tzu. He's a Chinese professor and an author of The Way of Virtue. And this is what he says about tithing. He who obtains has little. He who scatters has much. And so it is. All right, so now let's say our vision statement together. So if we can bring our vision statement up. We are a loving, joy-filled community honoring the many paths to God as we learn and live the science of mind principles. And so it is. So if you can just sit back, relax, open up your hearts and minds for the Bradford's beautiful music and Reverend Karen's wonderful message. Thank you.
I will make a quiet place within my heart, and I will wait upon the Lord, wait upon the Lord.
Be still, my soul, be still. Be still, my soul, be still. Be still and know.
I will make a quiet place within my mind, and I will wait upon the Lord, wait upon the Lord.
Be still, my soul, be still. Be still, my soul, be still. Be still and know.
I will make a quiet place within my
life,
and I will wait upon the Lord,
wait upon the Lord.
I will make a quiet place.
And in this quiet place where spirit dwells, there's love, joy, beauty, peace, freedom, abundance, prosperity. All that this essence is, we are. This essence moves through us and has its being through us. And in this sacred space we come together today. to hear the Bradfords, the most wonderful music that always feeds our soul, brings us together, gives us joy. Quite the blessing. And Reverend Karen's wonderful message today that we take and learn and incorporate into our lives, that we can spread it and help others and show who we are. So I just release this already perfect service into the law, knowing that is absolutely perfect. And together we say, and so it is. Okay. I'm reading from Creative Mind this morning. And I was kind of looking at what Reverend Karen was going to talk about. I kind of think this fits in. I hope. It's going to take me a minute to read it because it's a little bit longer than I normally speak. So here we go. The Word. I love it. The Word was with God, and the Word was God. The Word is nigh thee, even in thy own mouth, and thou shouldst know it and do it. What does this mean? It clearly states that whatever power there is in the Word, and it says it is all power, it is also in our own mouths. There is no avoiding the fact that the Bible claims for man the same power in his own life and his own world that it claims for God. In the lives of the majority men, men do not realize that the Word is in their own mouths. What word? Little do we realize that this Word, which they are so earnestly seeking, is every word they hear, think, or speak. Do we, who are endeavoring to realize the greater truths of life, always govern our words? If any word has power, it follows that all words have power. It is not in the few moments of spiritual meditation that we demonstrate, but we bring out the possibilities of the hidden word when we are allowing our thoughts to run in any direction. Not in the short time spent in silence, but in the long hours stretching themselves into days, months, and years. And we are always using the Word. An hour a day spent in silent meditation will not save us from the confusion of life. The 51% of man's thinking is what counts. It is easy when we are alone to brave the storms of life. Surrounded by our own exalted atmosphere, we feel the strength of the infinite. We rise in spirit. We think we are expressing the ultimate of truth, that all things are ours. These moments in a busy life are well spent, but must be unavoidably be brief. A busy life, okay, brief. But what the rest of the day? What about the rest of the day? What of the busy street, the marketplace, and all of the daily contact with life? Do we then obtain? Do we keep on in the same even way? Or do we fall before the outer confusion of our surroundings? We are still creating the Word and setting afloat in the great others of life. Are these words creating for us? Yes. How necessary, then, to keep the independence of the solitude? How seldom do we do this? And so it is.
Imagine what you want, then get out of the way. Remember, energy follows thought, so be careful what you say.
Be careful what you ask for. Make sure it's really what you want, 'cause your mind is made for thinking. and energy follows thought.
Your mind is in control, even when you don't know. And if you let it idle, ain't no telling where it'll go. Whenever you are sleeping and your dreams take you away, go on with your dreaming and listen to what they say.
And if you hear spirits talking, their wisdom can't be bought. Apply it to your thinking, 'cause energy follows thought.
Your mind is in control, even when you don't know. And if you let it idle, ain't no telling where it'll go.
Imagine what you want
And get out of the way. Remember, energy follows thought, so be careful what you say.
Hey, here we go.
Me?
We're
Turn
testing.
around.
We're testing 1, 2.
Yeah, there.
Hey, getting a little beat going on there. Is it that easy?
Hello, hello. It's the.
Yeah, I can check it out for you. Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Turn this off.
Good morning. Welcome to the West. Excuse me while I get redressed here. Welcome to the West Valley Center for Spiritual Living. I'm Reverend Karen Rice, and I still don't have sound.
There we go.
Good morning. Woo! There is a way. Always helps, right? Good morning, good morning. Welcome, welcome. I'm Reverend Karen Rice, and I'm happy that you're all here and that we have sound again in a proper way. And I am speaking today. The title of my message is Life is Intelligent. And so I'm piggybacking on everything that Reverend Clyde has set as the tone for the morning, because our theme really is to focus on tithing this morning. And so when I chose this talk title, to fit into our Seeding Our Future program, I chose Life is Intelligent based on a quotation from Dr. Ernest Holmes, who is the founder of this teaching. And Holmes said this: life is creative and it is intelligent. Life responds to us intelligently, therefore, we should deal with it intelligently. And so there's just this real beautiful big connection to coming together to sort of use our minds to think intentionally. And by the way, this is where I wanted to start this morning, is like, where did you get? I've never heard that. Where'd you get that from? No. That was a Willie Nelson song? Is he one of us? That is so interesting. He is a deep thinker. Well, we know he wrote some pretty music, and I like how he sings. I know he's a little controversial, but I like his voice. And that was such a really wonderful piece that was so fitting for everything, along with Kathy's reading, everything that needs to be said today. And I was thinking what the song made me think of was that my children, for some reason, my kids are all in their 40s. Well, maybe one's 50 now. But anyhow, they're older. And years ago in was it the 90s or the early 2000s, when the movie The Secret came out, I bought them all the book version of The Secret, and I was really excited about it. And I put a little love note, inside, and I gave it to each one of my 4 children. And in the last couple of weeks, a conversation in our family video squad that we talk every day on, one of my nieces said, "By the way, have any of you read The Secret?" And my 2 kids that are in the squad go, "No, I've never read that book." My daughter was familiar with it. My son said no. And I said, "Yes, you have. I bought you that book a long time ago when it was brand new." And it was one of those moments. It's kind of like ministry. This is exactly how ministry is. You give everything you've got, and then one day somebody comes up to you and says, "Oh, I went to visit this other church, and you know what the minister there said?" And then they repeat back to me something that I've been saying forever. And it's like, I don't know. What is it? I understand it with my kids, I guess, a little better. But it was an interesting conversation because my son said he listened to it while he was having his work day, and he listened to an Audible. And he said, which, by the way, he's not an avid reader like all the women in our family. And so it struck me how gorgeous it is to witness somebody who, when the student is ready, when we are ready, then we can hear it. Then we can absorb it and take it in. And I think that really is applicable to this idea that life is intelligent. And our only invitation this morning is to understand this process of tithing that we're going to be talking about intelligently. To not hear it in any old frame of reference that you once had, where you had a bad experience in another spiritual setting. Different religions have different ideas of tithing. In the day once, there was a strong emphasis on the 10%. On the 10%, it's not a tithe if it's not 10, because that's how you decipher the word. But I like, Reverend Clyde, very much how you welcome us to just pick our own amount. And that's what I want to talk about. So we use the term tithing in more modern times with less accuracy to the 10% and more encouragement for you to find your perfect place of how much you give so that it's comfortable to you. So this morning the message is not about how much, but it is about how much it means to you in order to be able to share what you have. So life is creative, and we're participating in that creativity all the time. And today we're looking at the different elements connected to tithing. Particularly, we're looking this month at our committed giving program, because it helps us so much to get an idea of what we can plan in terms of budgeting and being good stewards for our spiritual community. Because as Reverend Clyde is playing with the numbers, and he is the treasurer of our board, so nobody knows knows that those metrics better than Reverend Clyde for in the way they personally impact us. And I love that he always throws in the thrift store. Do you know the thrift store is a wonderful source of income for us? And all churches everywhere are needing to rely on sources other than your tithe in order to keep the doors open. So there are lots of ways we can be good stewards to our spiritual community, and tithing is certainly an important place to begin. Tithing is valuable to us because it addresses the law of circulation and the way that we put things into motion and the way that we put all things. I love that, from the reading in speaking about the word to the music, talking about your word is, I think you said it in the reading too, it's your thoughts. You did say it in the reading. It's your thoughts, it's your beliefs, it's everything that's going on in your mind and underlying the way that we show up in life. So we put intention around that, and everything shifts and changes and sort of readjusts because we are always regulating our own circumstances, whether we're aware of that or not. In Eric Butterworth's wonderful classic book on spirituality and money, it's called Spiritual Economics. He's a Unity, or is he still living? Does anybody know if he's still living? He may not. He's long gone. Eric Butterworth wrote in that beloved book this quote: "A committed giver is incurably happy. A committed giver is a person that is secure and satisfied. A committed giver is a prosperous person." And that's what we want to look at today. How do we look at giving in terms of it being more than tithing or an obligation? We're looking at a much bigger framework. So I wanted to start by talking about an essay that Ralph Waldo Emerson published many decades ago. And the essay is entitled "The Law of Compensation." And in terms of I love Emerson. Reading Emerson for me is so poetic, and it's like reading Emma Curtis Hopkins, similar to me, because it's like it's got that mystic side. You can't just read it. You have to break it down into little bitty segments and then just kind of try it on and see how it feels as you're having that experience. But in that essay, "The Law of Compensation," the reason I love that one, it is one of my favorites, is because he does such a good job of speaking to our choices, the way that we can make choices that will allow us to align into the flow of good, God's good that's freely given to us, and the way that this universe functions and supports our life. So Ralph Waldo Emerson said this. This is kind of fun. "All things are double. There is a tit for a tat, and there is a measure for measure. Love for love. Give, and it shall be given you. He who waters shall be watered himself. Nothing ventured, nothing gained." Our actions are characterized above our will, beyond what we think we have, what we're doing and what we notice. This is why intention is so important. Our actions are characterized above our will by the law of nature. So there are laws that keep everything in the universe moving in the precise way it needs to move in order for life to be sustained. And it's very scientific. And Emerson here is speaking of the law of compensation, which is a tit for a tat. I mean, we're looking at the mental equivalence. We're looking at the law of circulation, where everything balances out, where giving has to be included in order for this cycle to be complete. Receiving has to be there. So Emma Curtis Hopkins once said, "If God is for giving, than we must be for receiving. And so these kinds of conversations are in place to remind us that we have to be part of the give and the receive and the flow of life. Emerson had an interesting comment that when we forget the law of compensation and we don't live our lives aligned to that ebb and flow, and we get one-sided in one way or another, he says that when you step away from that and you neglect to use this law, you are living in halfness. In other words, not whole. You're not living the full potential of your life. You're only living half of what's possible. And I thought that was an interesting point. I thought that was worth grabbing, because what we see is as we practice the gift of tithing, of financially supporting our spiritual community, there's something we learn in there about the generosity and the potential joy that giving can bring to us in the way that we feel satisfied in our life. And the reason there can be joy in that generosity is because we are replicating what God does on a regular basis. The givingness of God never ceases. And so there is constantly this grace of God that is streaming into our lives. But our job is to be awake and aware and to receive it and to give thanks for it, to appreciate it. And when we appreciate things, they appreciate, they grow. What we focus on will appreciate. And also, by the way, here's a little side note. Emerson also said somewhere else that Jesus was the only man who lived fully in his wholeness. And consequently, he was mistaken as God, which makes me laugh. Because the message of Jesus and the oneness of the Father and I are one is a universal message. It's not just about Jesus being the Lord of all things. It's about a personalized way we can grab that message and use it and apply it in our own lives. So when I think of Emerson, and I'm talking about wholeness and Emerson's use of that term halfness, we don't want to live our life in halfness. I then thought of William James, who I remembered said something sort of similar about living a half life instead of a whole life. And William James is a favorite person of mine, and also of Dr. Ernest Holmes, one of the people that Dr. Holmes would quote from and mention when he was lecturing or writing. William James was a psychologist, a Harvard professor in the School of Psychology, and he was known as a philosopher and a deep thinker and a spiritual seeker. So even before Carl Jung brought a spirituality to the realm of psychology, William James was doing that first. And William James is probably most famous for a book, a well-respected book he authored that you may have heard of before, Varieties of Religious Experience. And what's lovely about William James is that he was known for this rather pluralistic view of spiritual ideas. And what that means is, some people actually said it this way, that he was a remarkable person in his tolerance for different spiritual views. But you know what I think of when I hear that, when I read comments like that? I think of us. I think of Dr. Ernest Holmes sitting out in the early 1900s and making some bold and profound statements and aligning to this strange teaching that wasn't quite called New Thought yet, but metaphysicians everywhere were gathering spiritual ideas and finding this union. And they loved the work of Emerson for that reason, because Emerson Emerson spoke about that. But Emerson had studied Swedenborg, and Swedenborg, had that message before anybody else. And then Swedenborg can go back to the classical philosophers, and all of them, of course, stood on all of the current days, not the classical philosophers, but those after the ministry of Jesus. Then they tied it all in together to see the theme in the ministry of this one named Jesus, and how there is this just ongoing message of truth, and that there are those threads of truth in all faiths. So when I hear people say that William James was tolerant for different spiritual views, I think of Ernest Holmes, because I've studied Holmes so in depth. What I know is that it's not a tolerance, it's a beautiful, deep curiosity about differences. And we could use some of that on the planet right now. Wouldn't it be wonderful if we could be more curious about different points of view, in addition to different spiritual ideas? So William James then would piggyback onto all of the great things that Emerson said, but there was a reason for that. There was an important reason that Emerson was so appealing to William James, and that's because James's dad, Henry, was best friends with Ralph Waldo. This is significant in all kinds of ways, which totally tickles me. Imagine being a little tyke. You're growing up, and Ralph Waldo Emerson is just your dad's best friend and in your life, and that kind of conversation was going on all the time. And wow, no wonder he was so open-minded and curious about the way other people believed. But one of the great things that William James rarely gets credit for as a psychologist and a philosopher and a spiritual seeker and a profound thinker is that his view in psychology, his view of a variety of spiritual experiences is at the root of the 12-step foundation. So even the Blue Book itself is written on the substance that William James brought into the realm of psychology, and it grew from there. So there's a strong, important connection, and we could see how our open-minded curiosity can do all kinds of things. And I think the way I primarily see the handprint of James in AA has to do with that gorgeous way that it's encouraged to have a higher power, but you have to resonate with the God of your own understanding. Wow, that's so much simpler than me trying to tell you, get God out of the box. Your God is too small. Grow your concept of God. And then they're in the 12-step programs. They just go, no, it's just the God of your understanding. Just be open to the fact that there's a power greater than you are, and you can open yourself and align to it and have it. So I love that connection between Emerson and James and the way it impacts our teaching. And it does just have that same essence of everything we believe in and teach as well. So as a professor, William James wanted to promote less religious spirituality that would support people in their own growth, in their own education of maturing and managing our mental and our emotional abilities. So what a great contribution he brought. Here's a quote from James, and the reason I told you all that, because he speaks about that idea of half-lived life. He says, listen, he says this, listen to this. Compared with what we can be, we are only half awake. Everyone is familiar with the phenomenon of feeling more or less alive on different days. On certain days, we have energy that is slumbering that we cannot seem to call forth. But those energies are still there. Isn't that a good reminder? I think these are really encouraging words, that there are days where we feel a little off, where we start, did I eat something weird? Or, whatever your thought process is that backs up your belief system. But if you took that all away and you just boil it down, that some days it's just that we have energy that is slumbering and that we're not fully awake, and maybe we could be gentle with ourselves, or even maybe we might align our intention to a spiritual practice that would re-enliven us, because that's an option too. So on those half-awake days, we can remind ourselves there are ways, there are skills that we learn right here in this teaching to help us feel more alive. So that's what we're looking at this morning. We're looking at activating that vigor and being more fully alive by intentional practice and using those words of affirmation in a powerful and positive way. And specifically, we're looking at this idea of giving this morning and recognizing that life is intelligent. And at the level we play, that is what we will get and see and encounter in what we receive as well. So the more we live from a perspective of wholeness, the less time we spend living our lives only halfway. And I think that is really valuable. Biblically, tithing was indeed about giving a tenth of our income or our resources as a means of good stewardship. But it is more than a legalistic obligation, because you see in the Mosaic Law in the early days of the Hebrew people, with the recorded history that some of us call the Old Testament. One of my Jewish friends said to me, "There is no Old Testament." It's just the Hebrew scriptures, because they don't accept. The Jewish people do not acknowledge the New Testament. So how could there be an Old Testament? It's just a testament. But there is all of that Mosaic law that's recorded. If you have ever tried to read some of those books with all the laws, it's almost humorous. In fact, it helps to read them if you have a good sense of humor. And that tithing certainly could be seen in that way, and is seen in some religions, continues to be seen as that important and that legalistic is what I'm trying to say. So what we know, there's no question for anybody that's ever tithed, you know that tithing mathematically, it's like a scientifically, mathematically, easy to prove in your own life, that giving and circulating your money, your gifts, your time, your treasure, all of those things has a benefit to it. But we do not give out of obligation. In fact, we have an emphasis in learning to give from the spirit of joy. It makes me happy to know that I can afford to give. Right? That alone is a way we can show our gratitude. So we encourage people to give freely and joyously. And then that was the recommendation when the New Testament and the teachings of Jesus came out. There was a stronger emphasis on giving freely and giving joyously. So I have this quote from one of our leaders in Centers for Spiritual Living. In fact, the former leader of our organization as a whole is Dr. Edward Viljoen. I can never say his name, Viljoen. He's South African, and it's a French name or something, but it's hard to say. But Dr. Edward is beloved, and oh my goodness, he just stepped away. It's an elected position, and he completed his time of service with us in terms of leading the organization last February. But he's the guy that took us through the pandemic. He got elected just in time, and I promise you, in my heart, I know that he was the right person to do that, because he's really, really good people. So he has an article that I read on a regular basis because it's part of our foundational curriculum. And it's an article on tithing. And so these are his words regarding giving. What you set in motion in life bears an uncanny resemblance to what comes around in your life. Scripture says it is the measure or the attitude in which you do a thing that establishes the nature of the returning action. The motive underneath the action determines the nature of the result. So the spirit with which you give is far more important than what you give. Can you give freely? Can you find that way to have the experience of joy? Can you not see it as an obligation, but see it as something that you have a gorgeous opportunity to participate in that can really change your life? There's beautiful wisdom in all of this because there is a necessity. Once you start tithing, you see that the necessity is that you are circulating goodness. You are being used by Spirit to allow more love to move through this planet, to move in this spiritual community, to allow us to have a future, to be here in the West Valley in the years to come, so that more and more lives can be touched. So that as some of us as individuals are so clear in what our transformational gifts have been from this teaching, so that those gifts can continue to ripple out and impact even more lives. So we're giving freely and joyously out of love because we care. Because we know it makes a difference. When we're giving with that kind of an elevated attitude, then it ensures that that kind of love and gratefulness will be circulating back in our own lives. So tithing as a spiritual practice, tithing initiates the circulation of money, but it initiates a consciousness of prosperity, a consciousness of well-being. Now, I want to tell you my story in part. When I first started attending my first Science of Mind church in the early 90s, I always knew to take my purse with me because they were going to pass the offering plate. And I always made sure I had cash with me so I could put a little something in the plate. And so it would come to that time, that part in the service, that time in the morning where we would say some sort of an affirmation, and that I would dig in my purse and I would look for a $5 bill and I would fold it up so nobody could see the number 5. I don't know why I did that. I didn't feel like I wasn't being generous. It felt like an okay amount for me to give. And then over time, and doing that for a while, I finally started taking classes. And one day in the class that we were looking at the topic of tithing and flow and the law of circulation, and all of these ideas were spoken of in this class. And so I felt a little confused because at that time in my life, I wasn't working. I didn't have an income, a personal income to tithe from. So I stayed after class and I approached the senior minister. And I said, maybe you can give me some clarity here. I'd like to give more than I give, but it's not my money. I'm in this marital relationship of a long time. He's working right now, and I am not. And this is not his church, and this is not what he would choose to do with his money. So I feel like I have a bit of a dilemma here. How do I know what is a proper amount for me to be contributing when that offering plate comes around? And she said the most amazing thing to me. She had this way of looking you in the eyes, and she said, Karen, just give an amount that you feel comfortable giving. Wow, that so let me off the hook. She didn't even really talk about his income and my income. She didn't even address any of that. She said, you decide, give an amount that you can comfortably let go of, and then see how that feels. Now, with that invitation, that shifted everything for me. Now, it didn't matter how much I put in the plate. As the plate came by me, it mattered how I felt when I put that money in there. And I realized when I folded it up so that nobody could see it was just a $5 bill, that there was a little something going on in my consciousness that I already knew in my heart. I just hadn't thought intelligently about it before. I hadn't recognized it. I never had an opportunity to recognize it before. And she also told me, give what you can give comfortably, what you can let go of comfortably. See, there's a piece of release in there that I think is a beautiful part of this story. But then she said, as time goes on, experiment. Just experiment and put in a little bit more, and then ask yourself how that feels. And you know what? It was in no time at all that I felt extremely comfortable giving a lot more than I had thought I would give in the past, and I didn't have any reservations about his money, my money. There was a natural flow that I stepped into because I was willing to experiment with the joy of giving, with the idea of letting go and knowing that good comes and that it cycles back and that it's a big, giant, beautiful process. Mark Victor Hansen, remember him? Chicken Soup and other things. He said this about tithing. Tithing will show you that it is impossible to give without sooner or later receiving in kind. It proves that giving does not cause you to have less, but in fact guarantees that ultimately and inevitably you will have more. I often think about Neil Donald Walsh, you know, the guy that wrote the Conversations with God books. Man, that guy is prolific. He never wavers from saying something that doesn't shake me up a little bit. Neil Donald Walsh was homeless, but he was raised as a Catholic, and tithing was an important part of his consciousness. And while he was homeless, he said when people would give him 25 cents, he would go somewhere to break that quarter so that he could give a nickel to somebody else because he needed to tithe. And that touches me. That touches me when there are people who understand that important part. We can't just receive and we can't just give, that you have to be willing to do both. When we practice this with intention, eventually we learn, and this is tricky, especially in New Thought, especially after The Secret. Eventually we learn as we practice this with great deep intentionality and love, we learn that we don't give to get. We aren't superstitious about our giving. We give because we care and we know how the law works. And we can be right in the middle of it. In a really beautiful, almost scientific and spiritual at the same time, in a beautiful way. Giving pulls us into that generous flow of good. So spiritual laws are in place in the universe in the same way that physical laws are. We need gravity to monitor us, and we need spiritual laws to be able to see those things that are difficult to see with the naked eye, the movement of God, the presence of Spirit in our lives, the powerful way that we are loved and that we are held sweetly in the hands of this divine Spirit. So that quote I quoted at the beginning of the talk, life is creative, it's intelligent, and it responds to us intelligently. Therefore, we should use it intelligently. So be smart. Giving is God's nature. And when we give, we are duplicating an act of God. So I have my sand dollar here. Thank you, Reverend Clyde. I'm so happy you brought an image of the beach where you took it from. And what I'm going to do with my sand dollar is I'm going to take it home and I'm going to put it on my altar, my home altar. And I'm going to use it to remind me of the generosity of Spirit. It is a symbol of prosperity, and it is a symbol of transformation. And I'm grateful. I gratefully received this gift. Thank you, Reverend Clyde. And that's what I wanted to say today. So take a breath. We're going to pray. My hand is sandy. So we just allow ourselves to settle in, finding our sacred center, feeling that essence of Spirit as God, Creator, the absolute, that almighty power in the universe that is a power for good. It's greater than we are. And it's right here, right now. Just feel that love of God within you and recognize this is the activity of Spirit. The very fact that we have carried ourselves into this sanctuary shows that we are living in this law of compensation. We bring ourselves physically and mentally to spiritual truths, and we have an experience, an immediate scientific, mathematical experience that corresponds. And we are filled, not in a halfway filling. We are filled fully, pressed down and overflowing with all the good of the universe because God gives it freely. And if God is for giving, we must be for receiving. So we open ourselves, we allow our consciousness to stretch and expand to that point where we recognize that we are one. There is only one mind. It is the mind of God, and that mind is our mind right now. So as we recognize this power and this presence, we allow ourselves to realize that there is an intelligence, that life itself is indeed intelligent, and that intelligence abides in our bodies. That every cell of our being is programmed to take care of us. That there is this energetic of Spirit itself that heals things that appear to ail us. There is that amazing movement of love, of God's sweet, precious love in our lives, and that is the healing power that it exists in all of our relationships, with people that we love and people that we are close to, and with people that live far away, and to the people we haven't even met, as Holmes would say, in the marketplace. And so we tackle our endeavors this week knowing that we are always greeting the divine. That as we have that posture of namaste, that we are seeing the possibility of fullness and lives fully lived in each other. And as we recognize those truths, as we recognize the way that life circulates, the way that our finances have an ebb and a flow, the way that our giving enhances our receiving, in this way we are step by step building a better world. So we say no to the negativity that seems to burden us. We say no to any sense of discord in our lives. And on the other hand, we open ourselves and say yes, yes, yes to receive these gifts that we are participating in with our intentional prosperity consciousness. So I know that we are blessed. I know that this spiritual community is amply blessed with all the good, all the financial needs, all of the commitments that we need to keep the center open and the doors and of flowing life, moving and ebbing and always transforming us in every way. And so in this spirit of deep, deep and holy gratitude, I simply release the words of this prayer into that dynamic law that responds immediately and affirmatively. And together we say, and so it is. Amen. Amen.
Grateful, grateful, grateful for all the love that I have. I am so grateful, grateful, grateful for all the love that I have. Everywhere I look and every face I see is love reflected shining back to me. I just give thanks for all these simple things, the joy and peace that gratitude brings. That's why I'm grateful, grateful, grateful for all the love that I have. I am so grateful, grateful, grateful for all the love that I have.
All right, thank you, Bradford. So now's the time to celebrate the abundance of our lives and the abundance of our community. So we're not going to say the giving affirmation. Instead, I'm going to read our abundance prayer that we should be reading every day with me. So I'm going to read it for you today, just in case you didn't read it today yet. All right. So I'm going to read the abundance prayer. You can just think of abundance of your own life. So I'll just say it. The abundance of life is in, through, and all around me. I am expressing and experiencing abundance every day. I claim and accept my abundance, our community's abundance, and our nation's abundance. I am grateful that my life and all life is supported. I release my prayer and joyously await my good. And so it is.
Please rise for our last song and let me hear you real good. Oh, 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 it feels so good to be alive. Oh, 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 it feels so good to be alive. I ain't thinking about my problems. I'm living now. I'm living now. And I ain't gonna worry about the future. I'm living now. I'm living now. So put your hands up if you feel like having a good time. Put your hands up if you're sharing love with all. And raise your cup if you're hopeful for tomorrow. to be alive. Woo!
All right. So now we're going to get to enjoy the abundance of the food that the Dining with the Dudes prepared for you. So please, not yet. So please join us for fellowship after service. So let's say our closing affirmation together. I recognize the abundance in my life.
I recognize the abundance of my life.
And so it is.